Hello, Joy Brooks with Email and Coffee. My guest is a digital pioneer who rode the covered wagon of internet and email marketing. As the editor of iMarketing News and the sharp witted columnist behind Stupid Media Watch, this trailblazer very possibly shaped the industry we know today, spearheading anti spam battles, dragging direct marketing into the digital age with his unique blend of insight and irreverence. Prepare yourself for the unfiltered tales from the front lines of marketing, told with a discourse that's as entertaining as it is informative. And now, Ken McGill. Hey everyone, Joy Brooks, Email and Coffee. I'm talking with Ken McGill, who's a writer from the way back in marketing, so deep in stuff. I mean, one of the funniest guys I know. Let him introduce himself because I can't do it justice.
Hi, my name is Ken McGill. I started writing about all things internet marketing in 1997. And in fact, I didn't want to write about all things internet marketing. I wanted another beat, but DM News told me, no, you have to take the internet beat. And so I took it, and a couple of years later, my career took off like a rocket. I would love to tell you that I had vision. I had no vision. I got lucky. And so I ended up working for various outlets. I kind of got niched into email, but I basically wrote about internet marketing stuff for 20 some years. And I recently, a couple of years ago, I stopped that. Now I've recently written a memoir called There He's Crying, and that book came out in October. And I think that's kind of starts things up.
Yeah, it does. It's funny, like we both found email marketing and sort of fell in love with it.
Yes.
You know, and I'm retired and I'm still working in email marketing.
Right.
I retired from working full time and now I just take part-time clients because I really do love it.
Yes.
But of course, I don't have my own email marketing.
Right. Well, this started with direct marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I started my career as a copywriter for a four-title business-to-business cataloging firm before the internet. And one of the things I loved about direct marketing was it's a no bullshit profession. And because in some of these other advertising, people can have these lofty, time-wasting conversations, and they just sit in these meetings that just kind of go on forever. And in direct marketing, you just test it. And another one of the things that I loved about email, I'll tell you a story. We bought a table at the Women in Direct Marketing Club. I don't know exactly what it's called, but Faye Waddleton, who was big in feminism several decades ago, she gave the keynote. And she was telling these women how oppressed they are and how bad they have it. And I'm like, these women are some of the most successful women you're ever going to meet. I mean, some of them drive Bentleys. And you're telling them how oppressed they are. And the reason they're successful is because they're good. In direct marketing, all you got to be is good. All you got to do is get results. And you move up. That's how it works. And that's one of the reasons I love the profession so much. Because you can't phony your way into success in direct marketing.
It either works or it doesn't.
Right. And this is the thing that really struck me with email was it's the same thing, but it's faster. You can test more, and it rewards performance. And it was just, plus the other thing I loved about email was it was early on. It was so political, and it was so because when I first started covering email, there were these two warring camps, right? The anti-spammers and the marketers. And I mean, this is way early on. The marketers thought this is going to be just like direct marketing, print. We're going to buy lists and we're going to send email to them. And these guys were like, no, email is not meant for any kind of commerce at all. You're not going to do any of that. And here I was at DM News. And the thing is, I don't know if people still remember DM News?
They may or may not, but okay, direct marketing is becoming popular again.
DM News was the direct marketer's national weekly newspaper. And I had, like I said, I got foisted its internet beat upon me. And the thing is, I understood electronics, internet stuff. But the one thing I had that others didn't have is direct marketers trusted me because I demonstrated an understanding of their craft, right? And so I could say to direct marketers, no, this is where you're wrong. This is bullshit. You don't do this. And they would at least listen to me because they knew I was on their side. And so the anti-spam folks knew I at least understood the technology. And so the first thing I did, so they like didn't like me, but they at least thought I knew somewhat knew what I was talking about. And so the first thing I did, remember a guy by the name of Paul Vixie? He ran the very first anti-spam block list called MAPS, Male Abuse Prevention Systems. This guy was kind of a nut. He's still around. But what I did was I published an article, and I got Tad Clark, the editor-in-chief, to put it on the front page, an article, an opinion piece by Paul Vixie, telling direct marketers that they had it all wrong. And he was funny because, anyway, we published a very long for DM News piece by Paul Vixie. And this guy had the power. He was kind of like Spam House now.
Mm-hmm.
If he decided you weren't going to mail, he could list you, and you were in deep trouble. And so the direct marketing world went nuts. How could you possibly publish this guy? And I said, how can I not? This guy affects you in email. This guy has more power over you than anybody, than any government. And so you need to listen to what he has to say, whether you agree with it or not. And that began a lot of reporting. I reported on these folks, and I believe, and I actually spoke to a longtime anti-spammer, and he agreed. I believe I created a kind of a bridge between these two camps where they could at least communicate. Now, did I make any of the negotiations? No. I didn't do any of that stuff. But what I did was I provided a venue where these two camps could clash and talk and see what each other had to say. Mm-hmm. And it was an honor to do that. And I never thought I was going to be in that I would never predict it to be. And this is all in hindsight that I figured this out. Mm-hmm. It was all happening so fast. Mm-hmm. And so many things in my career happened just as, what's the word I'm looking for? It's serendipitous. There's so many serendipitous. I give you an example. When I was the founding editor or the only editor of iMarketing News. I don't know if you remember that publication. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, and I've been this way all my life. I've always been very brash and always like, don't know what a little potato bug I am. You know what I mean? I just like, so the first person I reached out to is Seth Godin. Mm-hmm. And there's and I'm like, hey, Seth, you want to be one of my columnists? And I'm just like this 35-year-old punk talking to the guru of permission marketing. And he said yes. And so once I had Seth, I got venture capitalist Mark Kwame. I got Ruth Stevens, B2B expert. I got Danny Flamberg, who I don't hear from. But I mean, what? Nobody gets that lineup of columnists. But I got them. And they were the ones who put they put my publication on the map. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't feel like I did it. It just feels like it was done. I mean, back to this, things just kind of happening for a reason.
Yeah.
And so I've been kind of meandering. Maybe you want to bring me back on course?
No, it's funny because you say that you were like a potato bud. You had for me in any case, you had that cynical side to you that was able to look at yourself, but at others and the industry, and you were able to make fun of it.
Yeah.
And you were able to make it fun. At least I thought that. Yeah. Because you can't take it so seriously. No. And if you think that, if you're going to go through your career and you're going to bow down to everyone as if they're gods, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can't deal with that. I've got to
Well,
be able to say, well, you know what? That person's full of shit.
well, I've had a saying my entire career, and I really have had it, called "If I ain't laughing, I'm leaving."
Yeah.
And I mean, I was dead serious about that. The
Hmm.
minute I found a job to be not fun anymore,
Hmm.
I was gone.
Hmm.
The classic example was my stint at the New York Sun.
Hmm.
That was a dream job as far as I was concerned, and it very quickly turned into a not dream job.
Hmm.
And so I was there for about a year and a half, and then I left and went to direct, Penn Media, direct, and well, it was multi-channel immersion by the time I got there. But yeah, if I ain't laughing, I'm leaving, and that's the way I've always been.
Yeah, I've always work has to. Well, I have to have a passion in work, and that's 50% challenge, 25% personality, and 25% surprise.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's what keeps me going. And I'm also an irritating person. I'm
Well, and this is the thing that
irritating.
I was before you even said that. I was gonna tell you that a lot of my drive throughout my career comes from the fact that I'm an asshole. And so, and the thing is, you can be an asshole, but you got to be really good.
Hmm.
So I would strive to really turn in the best, most compelling content they had at these publications, so I could be a bit of a jerk. It's not mean. I mean, not like walking around
Right,
insulting people or
right,
nothing
no,
like
no.
that. No, I mean, I've
But you were
always
so unique. Nobody was taking that angle, and it
yeah,
wasn't like you were reaching for it. It was you.
right, right. And so I always would, like, for example, the stories I told in my book about the Air Force, what a wise ass I was. But the thing is, I worked really hard during my shift. I was a jerk. I was a wise ass, but I was a really hard worker. And that has been the case throughout my career. That's what I did with, when I worked with DM News and iMarketing News and Direct and the New York Sun and everywhere else. I worked to make my stuff. And I'll tell you something. If any of my former DM News colleagues see this, I apologize in advance. But I remember, I went to work for DM News, and I'm cranking in my copy, and then I got elevated a little bit. Well, I got elevated to we launched iMarketing News, and so people started turning their copy into me, and I would read this stuff, and I'd be like, wow, I'm really good because my copy has always been so clean, and it's always been well organized. And I started working with other writers and their copy, and it was so much of a struggle.
Hmm.
Because what the deal is, in at least what trade reporter used to be. I don't know what it is much like now. But what I used to say was, a good trade reporter is a three-legged stool, right? Marketing, writing, and reporting. Pick two, because you're never going to get three. And then what you do is you train the third stool, right? So they can be, really good at marketing, really good at writing, but they don't know reporting. Really good at reporting and writing, but they don't know marketing, and so on. And and you got to work on them on that third leg, whatever that third leg may be. And sometimes, man, it is a struggle. I had a colleague who, and it was funny because what we knew, she was the best reporter in that newsroom by far. But we knew when you wanted to find the lead, and her stories were always meticulously reported, we knew you go to the bottom of her story. That's where your lead's going to be. And so the first thing you do is go to the bottom of that story, take that sentence, push it up top, and then you work to shape the rest of her story. And I don't know where I started with this. I don't know where I'm going. But I was an asshole. And so yeah, but that asshole aspect
It's
is a
somewhat. It's an asshole with a little bit of humility.
yeah, yeah. I do. I
I
really I do.
It's like, okay, I am that asshole, but I'm a damn good asshole.
Right.
I'm an asshole.
It's not perfect.
Yeah. I mean, I used to say that my husband would always say when he was pissed off at me, he would say, "You're a fucking asshole." And I would say, "Well, that makes you Mr. Asshole, and that's what you got to live with."
That's it. And but I always strove to make up for that. But also, again, that's what these opinion pieces I used to write. I mean, I used to have people would come up to me in conferences. I didn't know them, but they knew me. And here's the thing that the best. I received this compliment on numerous occasions, and it is the most humbling compliment I've ever received. And they first of all walk up to me and they're smiling. So I've obviously made them laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And they come up and they take my hand and start talking to me, and then and they would say, I have to tell you, you've made me laugh out loud so many times. And then they would say, and the moment I stopped laughing, I realized I had learned something.
Right. Right.
How much better does it get than that?
Right. Exactly. Doesn't get. I mean, we're talking about a very a real niche writing career.
Yes.
Very niche.
Yes.
Where we're talking like dry as hell.
Right. Unless you make it not dry.
And you took it to a whole other level. Not only did you take it to a whole other level, but some of the things that you wrote are classic. And if somebody were to read them now, they would be as funny as them.
Well, that's the one. What I tried to do in the book, I included some of my columns,
right?
Old columns, and I tried to include columns that everybody would understand.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny. I had went to see my doctor, our family practitioner, in June, and she comes in waving my book, and she said, "That shove it in your ass was the funniest thing I've ever read in my life." And without ruining, I would tell my readers your listeners or watchers, that what I did for a period of, I think it went on for a few years,
mm-hmm.
in different sporadically. What I did was I would communicate with Nigerian 419 scammers with the first name SHUVITT, last name INYURASS. Shove it in your ass at yahoo.com. And I would talk to these guys, and I would make up stories about my family's life. And so I had an uncle or a brother or something, Pierce D. Boyle in your ass, aka Pop. And we go back and forth with these scammers, and I'm figuring that as long as they're dealing with me, they're not scamming somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is, how can they not see how ridiculous this name is? But they talk to me, and they'd email me back and forth, and they'd get frustrated because I'd keep telling them stories about my family. Anyway, everybody who's read that book says that's like the funniest thing they've ever read in their life. I don't know if that's the case, but it's the funniest thing in that book. And that is in and of itself. If you can get it up for $2.99
mm-hmm.
on Kindle,
mm-hmm.
$3 on Kindle. Mm-hmm. That chapter alone
mm-hmm.
will make it worth your while.
I don't know if you mentioned it in the book, but the best thing, and I have all of those old emails from the McGill report. The best thing was you created Shove It in Your Ass at yahoo.com, and then that name started showing up on lists.
Yes.
And when I read that, I was like, oh my God.
Yes, Asian dating. I forget who else, but yeah, and the thing is, I can't get in that account anymore. It's been so many years. But yeah, that name started getting passed around.
Mm-hmm. Started getting passed around.
And that was funny. And,
that was funny.
So, but it was a lot of fun. And
it was, I mean, who would have thought of demonstrating the power of email mm-hmm. with a persona like Shove It in Your Ass at yahoo.com.
Mm-hmm.
And the scamming you went through and the getting on lists and getting your name passed around. That was like I don't know. It was like a little skit, like like Carol Burnett show has that little skits. Boy, am I showing my age.
Right.
Where you can't wait, you can't wait to see, that skit, that character again.
Well, one of the,
That's what you did with shove it in your ass. It's like
well, one
when
of the
that
things,
article came up, I'm like, oh, good, then shove it in your ass.
did you ever see that there's an old sitcom named called This Suit Me?
No.
Okay, it's old. It's very old. But it's about a publisher, and I can't remember I can picture all the characters in this series. But he's a gloss magazine publisher, and he's got this daughter who's very earnest, and she wants to do very serious, long style reporting. She just really wants to deliver serious stuff. And he says Seagal was it, I think Seagal.
Oh, is it Steven Seagal?
No, not Steven. I don't know. People can look it up. But,
I'm looking it up now. What was
okay,
the name?
Jeff Shoot David Spade was one of the actors.
Oh, yes. Oh, now I know who you're talking about. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's got this earnest daughter who wants she can't
George
stand
Siegel.
yes. She cannot stand the fluff that magazine publishes. She's talking to her dad about the crap they're publishing. And he said, when you were a baby, when we used to feed you your peas, we'd make the airplane noise to entertain you, right? And he said, and that way you would eat the peas because we were entertaining you while we were feeding you your peas. And the thing you have to understand is, with all this fluff, your reporting are the peas, and all the fluff we publish are the airplane noises that we make while we feed you your peas.
Right.
And this is the way I approach trade writing my entire career. Was look, it's got to be entertaining. And the other thing, big revelation, which is going to be a big revelation, and probably wouldn't be at our age, but it's back in the 30s. When I stopped looking for flaws, is when my career took off. That's when I realized that it wasn't about me. It was about the readers. And the most valuable thing they have to give you is their time. And if you're asking somebody for their time, you better make sure what you're delivering is worth it. And once I started looking at, this is the thing I'm trying to, my kid's a writer and he's a pretty good one, but he's very self-indulgent. And I realize he's 21, and after I'm gone, he'll probably work this out of his system. But
he needs to have the same revelation that you did.
Yes, you're right. And I probably shouldn't try and force him to have it.
You can't, no.
But once you realize that you're doing this for everybody else and not you have a mindset that allows you to create content that's engaging and entertaining. And the other thing I used to do is I used to see the ridiculousness of all this stuff. Like I just dug up one for Canada. This is years and years ago. I was cleaning out my email inbox and I found this column from 2012 or something. And Canada had set, the Canadian federal government had set aside $700,000 for something called the freezer that they were going to use to collect and report and deal with spam. And I'm thinking, okay, after rent and equipment, I mean, we're talking like 2 mid-level bureaucrats who are going to be collected. And what are they going to do with these emails? I mean, what can they possibly do with this $700,000? And I forget what else I wrote, but this was the thing I used to do, was focus on the ridiculous. I would focus on the absurd by being absurd, or expose the absurd by being absurd. And one of the things, one of the greatest contributors to that was a regular column. I remember Stupid Media Watch. Well, because they were so stupid so often. And so here's the thing about being a columnist is, first column is easy. second column is nothing. Fifth column, then you get into 50 and
Yeah.
100. I
Mhm.
probably wrote more than probably thousands of columns. That's when it gets hard. And so you need a steady diet of something. And let me back up, because when we were off camera, we were talking about DoubleClick.
Mhm.
What was interesting about DoubleClick, for those of you, DoubleClick's still around, but it was a big advertising network. And it was very controversial because at the time, I don't know if you remember, but suddenly what happened was somebody taught Kevin O'Connor, the CEO, where they were serving these banner ads and they weren't working. And then somebody told Kevin O'Connor, the CEO, that you send advertising to people based on their previous purchasing behavior. Yeah, exactly. Well, but it was a revelation to him.
Yeah.
And so there was this company called Abacus, right? And what Abacus used to do was they had on file, they were an amazing company. They had on file all the cataloging buying behavior, and I forget how many million Americans, but they had this monster database of buying behavior. And what Kevin O'Connor bought Abacus, and what he was going to do was he was going to marry the Abacus database.
Data merge, data append.
Yes, to his online advertising network. And so then that way, what you would do is if you would put your name and address, forget your name, I think probably, on one of his network's websites, then they would put the Abacus network data against you, and they could start serving advertising to you that actually might be something you wanted to buy.
Exactly.
I, as a direct marketer, thought this was fantastic. I'm like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. This is going to save. Excuse me. This is going to save online advertising.
Exactly.
So I'm writing about this stuff, and the New York Times and the Washington Post are covering the same story. And this is wasn't often that this kind of thing happened, but I was in direct competition. Well, they would laugh at me if I said this, but they didn't think I was in competition. But we were covering the same topics. We were covering DoubleClick and the Abacus murder. And I would read the stuff they were writing, reporting or publishing. And I was like, this is ridiculous. This is not even kind of true. Not even close to true. And so that led me to question, like, okay, what about their reporting on the Middle East? What about their reporting? You ain't right? It's like, okay, if they're so bad here, what makes me think that they're suddenly going to be honest information brokers over here? Mm-hmm. So I started to realize just how bad our media was. And every time they wrote about marketing, they just it's so wrong. And the funniest thing about that was their circulation department was run by direct marketers. And so they would write about direct marketing, and they had no clue what's going on. I'm like, why don't you just walk down the flipping hall and talk to your marketing people?
It's still, with privacy, it has grown up into, the little evil has grown up to this big evil.
Right.
And what I really don't understand is you're going to get served some sort of an advertisement. Why wouldn't you want it to be the product that you like as opposed to the product that you don't like?
These reporters never got that, and I got a never-ending supply of columns. I just do stupid media watch and write about the latest idiocy coming out of the mainstream press about marketing.
It is, yes, it's creepy. You go on the internet and you look something up, and then you go back to Facebook and there's an ad.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little creepy, but then again, if you like that brand, it's okay. Now you feel like you're home.
Right.
If you hated that brand and it's there, then it's creepy. Okay.
That's
the A/B test when it doesn't work.
What's that?
That's the A/B test when it doesn't work. It's like,
right,
I went to this brand because I hate it.
The thing that used to make me nuts about the DMA was, which is no longer.
Right.
But I used to say to these folks, you need to be more transparent. Tell them exactly what's going on. Say, yeah, we're serving you ads. You're getting this stuff for free. Guess what? It's not free.
Right.
So we're serving you ads as long as we're so divided. I don't want to get into politics. But what I used to say was, when you have, now we see the problem with privacy is when the government gets involved because they have the guns.
Right.
And so what I used to say was, when you have a value for value transaction between two private entities, both of those private entities own that data.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'll explain a little further. If I buy a car from you
Mm-hmm.
and we both write that transaction down,
Mm-hmm.
we both have it on a slip of paper, we both own that data. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody else buys a car from you, you write your end of the transaction down, they write their end of the transaction down. Suddenly you have a database of two.
Mm-hmm.
And you own that information as much as the people who bought those cars. As long as it's not a forced transaction,
Right.
it's beneficial to all.
Right. Right.
And this is the thing we used to drive me nuts. Was I used to
And
say,
it can be somewhat anonymous.
yeah,
It's a token. It's a token.
Right. But I used to say, look, this advocate deal has the potential to make advertising work, to show us stuff we want to buy, to keep the cost of goods and prices of goods down. I mean, this is a win-win for everybody. I don't know whatever, but the thing is, what the Times and all the other consumer media did was they just demonized the whole business,
right.
and they finally shut the deal down.
Yeah, well, it's sort of the concept of the data when it grew, when it grew the left limb and it turned into social.
Mm-hmm.
That's when all the evil became apparent. That's
right.
when the evil became apparent.
Right. And the thing is, it was when things were much simpler when I was covering this stuff.
It was the beginning. It was the very beginning.
But now the reason,
Wild West.
The reason that the evil has reared its head is because the government, our federal government, is involved. That's when
they realized that there was benefit for them.
Yes,
and how they could benefit. I
said it back then.
Uh-huh.
I said, the thing you have to worry about is the government getting your data, because
that's the same thing with AI.
Yeah, yes, you get the wrong people in power, and suddenly maybe you're eating too much steak.
Mm-hmm.
And so I predicted back then. I'm not in the game anymore, but I'm not surprised that this is the way things are shaken out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I forget where I was going with all that. But anyway, that's one of the reasons it was so much fun, was because it was controversial and there was so much ridiculousness going on. And the other thing that I used to do was I never took criticism. I took it seriously. I never took it to heart, because again, when you're in a weekly, I'll tell you what, you ever hear of Mike Royko, the Chicago Tribune? Mm-hmm. He was a daily columnist and he's amazing. He's way back in the 70s. He's been dead for like 20, 30 years. Mm-hmm. He wrote a column every single day. Mm-hmm. And they were great. I mean, it's some of the best writing you're ever going to read. And now, granted, he worked in Chicago, so he had a lot of material to work with between the corrupt political machine and everything else. Mm-hmm. But I wrote a weekly column for years, and that deadline comes around so fast. And the thing is, when I would get, because you write that many columns, you're going to come out with a clunker or two or more. Mm-hmm. And there were columns I wrote when I was dead wrong. Mm-hmm. And this was something, if you remember, I talked about this in the book. One of the greatest lessons my father taught me was, when you know you're wrong, admit it. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, shout it from the rooftops. Mm-hmm. If you're debating somebody and you suddenly realize you haven't got it right, by the way, everyone else witnessing the debate has known you've been full of shit for like the past hour. So the only way to save yourself is to say you're wrong.
Just say it.
The minute you do that, you disarm your opponent and you burnish your reputation with everyone else. And you'll get nothing but respect for people. So I used to write fairly argumentative columns a lot of the time. And sometimes the blowback would be really harsh, not hard. And but I'd read it, and I always viewed that as an opportunity for another column. Okay, next week's deadline, you guys just all kicked the shit out of me. I'll address it if I think you're right. And I would, in the next column, I'd say, okay, last week, I think it said, well, one time I began a column with, what's that sound? Why, that's my head coming out of my ass. And I wrote, I was wrong. And the readers pointed this out, and they were right. I was wrong. Sorry. And I would get so much feedback because no one does that.
Right. Right.
Or so many people don't do that. And, you know, it's like such a liberating thing to be able to admit when you're wrong. Because when you can't admit that you're wrong, you know, you just get balled up into this.
You also don't evolve, and your writing doesn't evolve, and you don't go anywhere.
Right.
So, you know, you're saying, this is my audience, and that audience, it doesn't keep growing. It keeps getting smaller.
Well, and the ones who say, no, you're full of shit. Or the ones who left certainly know you're full of shit.
Right.
Right? And, I mean, I had a guy, he doesn't talk to me anymore because I criticized him once, but he's a big anti-spammer. And I forget what the issue was. But I did the mea culpa column. I said, man, I blew it. I got that one wrong. Here's why. Here's what I think now. My phone rings. And it's this anti-spammer. He's like, Ken, no one does that. That's so amazing. And I'm like, you know, and what's interesting was the guy who called me, he did exactly what he said. I don't know how to put it. He wouldn't admit he was wrong. Because what happened was somebody broke into, it was like Epsilon, they stole all of Epsilon's email addresses. And the anti-spammers are all sounding the alarm and saying, you know, medical information and the apocalypse and the world's going to end. And I'm like, they're fucking email addresses. Just stop. And this guy went bananas because I called him out. I said, this guy in particular, it's like, just stop it. And because I got a call from some other trade reporter saying, do you think Epsilon is going to survive? And I'm like, what? Where are you getting this? And he said, from so-and-so. I said, don't listen to him. It's their email addresses. And so I called him out in the column. I said, okay, the biggest Mr. Fire Alarm is so-and-so. He needs to cut this shit out now. And so he went nuts. It's been like 5 years. He still hates me. And but before that, he was congratulating me on admitting I was wrong. And then he turns around and ironically gets pissed to the point where he just will not speak to me.
Yeah, that's tough. But I'll tell you, these days, email addresses, a breach with email addresses is a big deal.
Really?
These days, it can be. Because again, you could data append.
Right.
So
well,
if somebody's, you know, and the thing is, you know, it's usually, it's just an odd thing. If there's a smart breach, and I don't even know the difference between a stupid and a smart breach, but if it's a smart breach, that's dangerous because now they're looking for data to do evil things. If it's a stupid one, some kid who can just say, I did it, then who cares?
Right. Well, and we could have had that conversation. And we didn't. Everybody was just, their hair was on fire.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is your hair on fire? They could have said something like you just said.
Right.
And I would have said, oh, all right. Maybe not so much hair on fire, but maybe it's not as innocuous as I thought.
Right. I mean, if there's some sort of a reason where you're trying to get the data because you've got the other database to you know, put it together, and if you're looking for 3 names, just 3, where you've got social securities and you know, you're just trying to put some kind of crap together. Yeah, I mean, am I giving some creep an idea? I'm just saying, you know, I've often said, that hackers should just get a real job because they're good.
Mm-hmm.
Just get a real job.
Mm-hmm.
Do you hate people that much? Or you just trying to show people how smart you are?
Right.
You are smart. If you can hack into these types of systems, you are smart. So
I've
do
always,
something good.
one of the things I've said is I've mocked the privacy movement so much that the great irony is going to be I'm going to be like 70 and somebody's going to get my information and just wipe me out.
What you have.
Wipe me out. So here, old man, you didn't you think privacy was a big deal? Okay, go starve. And who knows? But
well,
I had fun.
AI has the potential to do that.
Right.
But I had conversation with somebody, I don't remember if it was, I think it was online. So it's in one of my upcoming episodes. But I said, 5-10 years. And they said, you're giving AI 5-10 years? She's like, I give it 3 years.
To do what?
To be that smart.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay. She says it's going to be doing wild things in 3 years.
Okay.
And now, I think it's true. And I'm glad I am where I am.
Mm-hmm.
And not in the beginning of my career as opposed to the end of my career.
Right.
Because there were enough things changing for me. When I started work, there were typewriters.
Right.
Within 5 years, there was word processing, dumb terminals, and word processing.
You're about 5 years ahead of me.
And I had to learn.
Yeah.
Because I saw the writing on the wall, and
Right.
I thought, if I don't learn this, I'm dead. So I learned it.
Well,
and I just kept learning it. Well, I still know people my age who are like, I don't know how to use Excel. I'm like, oh, for crying out loud.
What?
Excel.
Oh.
Like, how could you not know how to use Excel?
No, funny story. One of the reasons, I quit. I was a computer science major in college. And there's a story in the book about why I quit. It's this insane 6-hour trying to program a small event. But one of the reasons, it's just so funny now. One of the reasons I quit computer science and went into journalism was because I believed that in computer science I was just going to have to re-educate myself continually. Thinking I wasn't going to have to re-educate myself continually in journalism, which is all I did.
Right.
And it was exciting. And it was very funny. It's like, I don't want to have to re-educate myself. Well, that's not going to happen. If you're any kind of successful, you're going to be continually re-educated.
Continuously.
And
but also, my dad wanted me to go into computer science, and I was like, Dad, you have to be a data engineer, because at that point in time, you had to excel in math. You could not get into computers without excelling in math, and I'm talking about calculus and high-end math. That was the math that was like, what? I don't understand that. Algebra, okay. Calculus, no, you lost me.
Yeah, that's as far as I went.
Yeah, so I was like, my first year in college, I took biology. And I was like, I can't take any of these classes because they're all too much for me. I can't deal with this. And I ended up in classics wanting to become an archaeologist.
Right.
And then, I don't know, it was in 2000, I went back to school and I took all the math classes for an associate's degree to become a programmer. Right. Like, why was it so difficult then? It's very simple now. And I was like, like add 20, 30 years.
Right.
Add a little focus and you could do almost anything. And that's, that's something that is, you talk, you broach it a little bit in the book, but that's something that is somewhat pervasive in our culture, is that if you have to work hard at it and if it hurts, it's no good. No. It's traumatizing. And now I'm traumatized.
Right.
And you're triggering me. And I'm a victim. And I'm like, I went through all that. It didn't traumatize me. I'm not saying my teachers beat the shit out of me, but I will say that not everybody liked me.
Right.
And to this day, not everybody likes me.
No.
And I don't think that I only need to be surrounded by positive people.
No.
I think let's surround myself with whomever and let's deal with it every day.
Right. Right.
There's some amount of I don't know, an inability to deal with the negative, to expose yourself to a difficult discourse. Like you went to the Air Force.
Yes.
And one of the things that you said in the book, they break you down
Yes.
to build you back up.
Yes.
Every military does that.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for a company.
Okay.
And talk about, me talking about 5 things at once. I worked for a company and they were Israelis. I was in my 30s going to my 40s. And to their credit, they were trying to groom me.
Okay.
I am a maverick, so you can't, good luck with that.
Right.
So they're trying to groom me. And what he was trying to do, because every Israeli goes in the military,
yes,
he was trying to break me down. But I caught on to that. I'm like, don't do that to me, man. Don't do it. You don't understand. I'm not that person. I'm not military. I'm going to fight you back. Now, had I been very young, maybe it would have been possible. But as I said, I was in my 30s and I recognized what he was doing. And I thought to myself, I'm that person that needs to fall down flat on my face
mm-hmm.
to get up, shake it off, and move on.
Right.
If I don't do that, if I don't prove it to myself, then it's a lie.
Right.
That's why I said I'm irritating. I'm a difficult person.
Well, one of the things that how they work it, because I've had people over the years tell me, okay, well, if I was in boot camp, I'm not going to do what they say. And I'm like, yeah, you would.
Yeah, you will.
Well, here's why. Because what they do is they punish the entire unit for the mistakes of one.
Right.
Okay, so in the Air Force, there are flights of 50 people, 50 guys in my case. And somebody fails inspection, they punish
everyone,
that person and the 49 others.
Right.
And what that does is it incentivizes the group to make the screw up fall in line. And so now, and I don't know if you remember my son just watched the movie Full Metal Jacket. Remember that movie?
Mm-hmm.
Most realistic boot camp scene I've ever seen. Now, we did not resort to this. We were able to straighten the guy up before we went this far. But I'm telling you, it does happen. A buddy of mine, him and his unit, they did do it, which is something called a blanket party. Mm-hmm. And what they do is they put bars of soap in the end of their socks, and then they lights out. They get up, and a bunch of them hold down the blanket, and they just start whipping the crap out of them with these socks filled with soap. You get a blanket party or two, you're gonna toe the line. You're gonna do what you're told. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And now we were able, like I said, to get our screw up in line before. But I'm telling you, we would have resorted to that.
Yeah.
Very Lord of the Flies ish, but we'd have done it. And so I don't know how the hell we got here.
Well, I was talking about being broken down. It's, you want to say to yourself, oh, that's terrible. That can't happen. But we're talking about the military.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. A lot of bad things are going to happen out there.
Well, the military is made to kill people.
I remember my husband, he's passed away now, but after 9/11, he said to me, I'm going to take my CDL. He says, I'm going to apply for Halliburton, and I'm going to get a job. I want to go overseas.
Okay.
So he went, and he was in Babylon.
He would have been in Iraq.
Iraq. And he was there, and he drove jet propulsion fueled trucks, CDL So he had an extreme license, and he said he had kids in the car that were supposed to be protecting him. And he said there was an incident where the kid was like pissing in his pants, and he grabbed the gun. And he said, "Get out, get out!" And he had to protect the truck.
Huh.
He also had some, at that point in time, it was Cheney. There were conversations about the metal protection that they were supposed to have around, and he said that they had them in bunkers, but they were not releasing them.
And what in bunkers?
They had these like storage facilities full of these metal protections that were supposed to be like for the IUDs.
Yes.
And he said it was political. There was very political.
I talk about this. Excuse me, people watching this. I keep plugging my book. I'm sorry, but I talk about this in the book. So now this is how old I am. When I'm in the service, Jimmy Carter is the president, right? And now I am 18 at the time. And while I'm there in Holland, now this is an F-15 base. And so we're talking, front lines of the Cold War. This is Holland, right? And they elect Reagan. And of course, I'm very young, and we're all like, he's going to get us killed. But here's what happened. What's really interesting was, and I'm telling you this, I'm telling everybody this, whoever you vote for president, you must think about the people in your military, because whoever's president affects the military so profoundly. And I will tell you, when Jimmy Carter was president, our fuel dump wasn't even sandbagged. Okay? And then Reagan gets elected. Suddenly we're on high alert. And we're sending jets, F-15s, up over the Black Sea to intercept these MiGs coming our way. And it was like this ballet, this military going up over the Black Sea. And the thing, okay, now understand, people, it wasn't the pilots, but all us enlisted guys, we were smoking hats constantly. Okay, we were high a lot, and so now the pilots, it was not the pilots. Those guys, their jet was their high. That's what they got high on, was flying this
and they
fighter.
Still do.
Yes, and so we had this thing called the Zulu barn, which had 2 F-15s in it. And when the klaxon would go off, you had 2 minutes to get those jets off the ground. And things would just go haywire. And but we always got them off. And so anytime for the rest of my career, somebody would be talking about some crazy deadline, I'd say, "You want to hear deadline? Let me tell you about a deadline. How about 2 minutes to get two fighter jets off the ground?" And what I contend was, and we got 2 days I was there, we got best air base in the Air Force. And I contend only half jokingly that one of the reasons we were so good was all the enlisted guys were mellow. And so when things would go haywire, we were like, "It's okay, man. We'll get you off the ground. Don't worry about it. We'll get it fixed." And so that joke aside, one of the things, so we started going on these 12 on, 6 days a week alerts and exercises. And the other thing we started doing was, and I was put on this crew, we started building these things called revetments, which were these steel walls. Okay, and they were boxy steel walls which would pour gravel into the space. So it was a steel wall, gravel, right? And we would build these things around each of the buildings. And what they were for was, apparently what happens when you bomb an air base, it's not necessarily the initial blast that gets so damaging. It's when stuff starts bouncing all over the place. And so we were building these revetments. So okay, if this building got hit, it would get contained by these walls. So we were getting ready to get attacked. Mm-hmm. And it just was such a different military between those two presidents.
Yeah.
And I talked to some military folks I'm not going to get on anybody or voice any opinion about the presidents, but I can tell you the same thing happened with the various presidents that we've had since, it affects it. I mean, it totally affects the military. Depending on what you want to see happen with the military, maybe you don't want much of a military. Well,
yeah, but of my opinion, you can only get peace with force.
Yes, absolutely, peace through strength. And so when he did it, and but I mean, he was clearly, now the thing is, I figured all this out in hindsight. I mean, I was 18, 19 years old, and I really am. When people say thank you for your service, I'm like, just stop. I mean, I saw no combat. I was in Amsterdam smoking hash every weekend. I saw more concerts. I used to go to this club called Paradiso, and in fact, recently my kid was like, "You think Paradiso?" And I used to go there, and you had to get a hand stamp, and this was also before drug testing was in full force. You had to get a hand stamp, and to this day, I reflexively hold out my palm whenever there's an ink stamp to be given to get in somewhere. I hold out my palm because it was easier to hide when I got back on base and easier to wash off. And spent a lot of time partying. Okay, I tell you a story completely unrelated. Edit this out if you want, but this is the freakiest thing that's happened to me, and I can't tell you how long. This just happened last week. So when I was in Holland, we had these shawarma sandwiches, these shawarma shops, right? The Middle Eastern dish available throughout the world. You can get them in New York. In fact, there's a kebab house in South Charleston here in West Virginia where you can get a shawarma. It ain't a shawarma. I don't know what the difference is. It's been 40 years, but we loved them. The shawarma was our go-to food after a night of partying. We would bring it back. We'd bring shawarmas back on base for lunch. And it was one of those things that, like, when you left that base, you get station elsewhere, you made sure you had a shawarma meal before you left because you were leaving this special food behind, right? So anyway, there's this guy named John, best friend. And he was actually stationed with me in Arizona as well. We spent all 4 years together. And he was one of the few I kept in touch with after I got out. And went and visited him in Atlanta a couple times. We picked up right where we left off. So he dies in 2021. And I go to the funeral, meet his mom. We exchange contact information. We've stayed connected on Facebook ever since. And so John popped up in a dream last week.
Oh, wow.
Nothing crazy, nothing dramatic, just that we were chatting. And so I told his mom, I said, Charlie, John popped up in a dream. And she said, he's been visiting me like for 30-second stints, like rarely lately. And shawarmas keep coming up. Does that mean anything to you? And I call her, I'm like, Charlie, do you not know what a shawarma is? And she said, no. I said, Charlie, your kid's speaking to you. And I told her about what a big, part of our lives that sandwich was when we were in Holland. And she didn't even know what it was. She just pulled this out. She didn't pull it out of the air. She got it for her kid. And just, totally unrelated to email craziness. But
there is a little bit of woo-woo in you, isn't there? I'm as pragmatic as you can be. Like, prove it. Like, shut up and prove it. But there's and I can't stand woo-woo. It's like, oh, let's meditate. No, shut up.
Crystals.
Yeah, exactly. Crystals. Or, oh, I see your aura. I'm like, okay, time out. But there is a little bit of woo-woo in me too. There are some things. When my husband, again, he was overseas, and it was around the time where the government was shifting back to Iraq. So they were signing all of the talks, and things were blowing up all over the place. Mm-hmm. It was like, I believe it was June or July.
You must have been scared to death.
He had said to me, he says, listen, I can't be calling you. I can't be writing you. But he goes, here, they give you a packet. Here's a number. You call, they'll know where I am and what I'm doing. And if there's any bad news, they're going to know. Mm-hmm. And they'll tell you. So, so I was like, okay, all right. So on the news, they're basically talking about, things were just blowing up all over the place. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God. So I call. And no, he's fine. he's coming back. He's done. He's stint. He has to come back because they allowed them 3 months, and if they said I can't do this, they don't want. Halliburton did not want freaking hysterical mercenaries. That was the last thing that they want. So he raised his hand and said, "It's time for me to go home." And they sent him home, and they said he's on his way home. And I was like, "What? Hello? Where is he? We don't really know exactly right now, but he's on his way home. He'll be contacting you shortly." And I'm like, "Oh, thank God." So very like a week into that, I go to bed one night, and at that point in time, I had a Rottweiler
Mm-hmm.
who was a very good watchdog.
Okay.
And so she would sleep in bed with me, and I fly up in the middle of the night because I hear my husband calling my name.
Mm-hmm.
I fly up. I wake her up. She's not barking. I jump up. I look outside. I'm like, "He's outside? What? Nothing." And about 2 hours later, the phone rings. Now, this is like 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning now. And I couldn't sleep. So the phone rings and I pick it up. He goes, "Hi." I'm like, "Well, hello?" He goes, he was in Holland, because they would, it was either Highland or, no, it's Holland. I believe it was Holland.
Right.
Amsterdam.
Right.
That's where the C4, C3,
Yeah.
whatever. That's where they flew. That's the first stop before they come to the U.S. And he goes, "I'm here. I'm, just waiting for a flight out. I'll be, in New York sometime tomorrow afternoon." He goes, "Everything's okay. Everything's fine." He goes, "But let me tell you, I hit that tarmac. I shouted your name out." I said, "Yeah, I know."
I
We're connected in some odd way.
yeah, I believe in that stuff, and I'm like the
I
last
put my
person.
finger on it. I just,
Right. It's just when stuff like that presents itself, you just I don't know what to say. But,
yeah.
that form of business, I'm like, okay, she didn't just pull that out of her butt. She got that from somewhere.
Yep.
What it means, I don't know. I like to make it simple. I think he just wanted to let her know he was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it gave an old woman a lot of comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we need to know.
Yeah, really. It's somewhat simple. I mean, we haven't figured out, we don't know what consciousness is.
Nope.
We don't understand how the brain works.
Nope.
Totally. We certainly don't know where we go after we die.
Mm-mm.
And we don't understand this collective narrative that goes on. I mean, we try to, we have scientists and archaeologists and historians and all these people trying to make sense out of it, but there really is some common denominators in this historical narrative. How many years does it go back? And every time they go back, like 10,000 years, it's 20,000 years. It's like, how far does it go back?
Who knows?
How far does it go back?
But I do believe we're all connected.
We're all connected in some odd way.
And I do believe that, you need to forgive as much as you can. You need to, I do believe there's a reckoning of sorts. I believe that, and here, I'll tell you where I'm getting this from. There's just a slew of videos on YouTube about people who claim to have, do I think they're all true? No. But there are some common denominators.
Mm-hmm.
And the common denominators are you sign a contract before you come here.
Mm-hmm.
For all the good stuff and all the bad stuff. So and you're experiencing this stuff. And the thing is, you can look back at your life. Like, I look back at a slew of really horrible girlfriends. And they just basically look at it. Life will send you the same lesson over and over and over again.
Until you learn it.
Until you learn it.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I learned it. I got my wife, and man, did I hit the lottery. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you did too. And then when you're done, you look and all you've accomplished and everything you did right and wrong, and you judge yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and the object, I think, is to spread as much decency. And there's so much poison in this world right now. We got to figure out a way to end the poison.
And the poison. We've got to just, it's, it sounds stupidly simple. You've really got to be good.
Yes.
And do the good work. So it's not just saying, oh, I feel this way about, no, I don't care how you feel.
Right.
Do the good work.
Yeah.
Do the good work.
Well, just, compliment somebody on it, I don't know, I don't know. But, I'll tell you what I miss. You remember Ray Schultz? He was the editor of Direct Magazine.
Okay, no, I was going to say Peanuts, but that's a different show.
No, Ray Schultz was the editor. He was also the editor of DM News for a time. And him and I had diametrically opposed political views. I'm not going to get into who believed what, but we were different. Mm-hmm. And we would sit in his office, and we would talk for hours on these various policy issues and philosophical issues. And we were different. But we would never raise our voices, and the conversations, I thought, were fascinating. Mm-hmm. Because I could get this view from somebody who didn't think like me at all. Mm-hmm. And we would have this rational give and take. And you can't have that anymore.
No, and that's important to have. Because I think
I could still have that with Ray if I was still talking to him. But as a nation, we're too busy spitting fire at each other.
Yeah.
And we need to figure out a way to put that behind us. So what somebody doesn't agree with you?
Exactly. That's the point. So what if they don't agree with you? If they can do it civilly, if they can say, well, I had a conversation with a friend the other day, and she said at the end of the conversation, we don't agree on this at all. And she goes, and I'm having such a good time talking to you.
Yeah. We need more of that.
It's just like, and we were talking about dog training.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the problem is social media.
I also think that, people have, well, listen, social media and COVID, it's just like the perfect storm.
Right.
It really is the perfect storm.
Right.
We were already, I would say from the 70s, we were already heading in this, satisfaction, instant satisfaction. I've often said, take it for whatever it is. I've often said, as I got older, sex is totally overrated. The whole thing, when we're kids, till 11, 12, we have no concept. No concept. Whether pink, blue, boys, girls, dolls, sports, it really doesn't matter. We're just doing stuff we like to do. At some point, those hormones kick in and all hell breaks loose. Mm-hmm. Then it's an issue. Mm-hmm. And we're never told what to do with all those hormones. We're never told, listen, dude, it's hormones.
Right.
Because the stuff that I did between I was 15 years old and really up until I met my husband, and I was in my 40s.
Right.
The shit that I did, and I'm talking about hormones. Mm-hmm. I am merely talking about hormones.
There's your dog.
That's what it's all about. And no one taught, I'm sure, I shouldn't say no one taught me. My mother tried, but I was like, you don't understand, Ma. You don't understand. You've never been through this. Every generation says that.
Yeah, she's
never been through this. You don't know how I feel. Say something new, please. And my mother, and I, when I was in my 30s, we had an on Golden Pond moment. So we buried the hatchet and we became best of friends. Best of friends.
Could it happen before she died?
Yes. And, and that's I really think that it's very important for us to be able to understand, give each other a little bit of rope, like go hang yourself. But I'm not giving you the whole rope so you could kill yourself. I'm going to give you enough so that you could go make a mistake. And then I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here for you. It's a safe place. I'm always going to be here for you. That's what I said to my husband. We would argue and I would say, I'm always going to be here. Always. This is a contract. We got married. It's a contract. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here. So no matter what you do, maybe I should be telling you this, honey. No matter what you do, I'm going to be here. I'm never going to pack my bags and leave.
Well, we're the same way, and that's also what we've told our kids was, this will always be a safe place for you to land.
Yeah.
I don't agree with what you think is going on with you, but I'm not going to disown you.
Right.
And I love you. And, this house will always be a safe place for you to land. That's not going to change. And I did have a trans kid reach out to me whose father disowned him. And his mother's kind of where I am. And, we went back and forth for a while. And I think I helped this kid. I said, look, I wrote this book for people like your dad because I am like your dad. I'm a cigar smoking, martini drinking, gun shooting, I'm in West Virginia. I get a new gun, I go out in my backyard and shoot. And, but this doesn't mean you can't respond to, you can respond to that sort of thing with love.
I was going to say, it doesn't mean you don't have a heart.
Right.
It doesn't mean you don't love. It doesn't mean you don't care.
Right.
Men don't have to be women. Oh gosh, it's a little confusing. It's I don't know what it would be like for me if I were a kid. I mean, because I went through the love generation and the peace generation and the drug generation, and I did all those things. So I and the kids now are doing all those things. But but the risk is that now, the risk was always there's somebody out there ready to exploit you for what you're going through, and you just need to be aware of that.
Yes. Well,
there's always been that. Always.
This is the issue, and this is the thing that this is fun. And I don't think I put this in the book, and I should have. I probably didn't because my kid's going to read it at some point. But we're talking about somebody who's pretty malleable, pretty impressionable.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, when I was a reporter, this is a very old saying. If your mother says she loves you, check it out.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, just you check everything. You don't believe anything anybody tells you or shows you. You check everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said to my kid, and this I know I do say in the book, is look, you can call bullshit on everything. Don't even think about it. Just call bullshit on everything that's popular right now. Call bullshit. You'll be right 80% of the time.
Right.
I mean, that's going to be your track record. Your track record is going to be really good.
The old 80-20 rule.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's the 80-20 rule. It's very funny. And so, like, for example, my kid came down and he said he saw somebody trying to commit suicide by drinking bleach online. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, you saw somebody drink a yellow liquid. Mm-hmm. You don't know that it was bleach.
Right.
And I need you to understand, you don't just take anybody's face value. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, and that's one of the issues with raising children in today's environment, is because my kid, he's up in front of his computer. And this is the thing I love, is all these people, well, if it was my kid, I would just take his computer away. No, you won't. No, you won't.
You go to the library. You go.
No.
Your phone. You could go.
No. And I mean, he's got friends. He's got friends in Venezuela, Argentina, Australia, Belgium. He's got friends all over the world. I would never. They all play Dungeons and Dragons, and would never take that away from them. But it's very disconcerting knowing that there are these influences. There's some fairly bad, dare I say, evil influences out there, and they can get to your kids. And that's something that every parent has to deal with right now. Because there are these forces so far out of your control.
All right. We used to just have to worry about the guy driving the car on the way home from school who would open up the car door and say, "Get in the car, little girl." That's all you had to worry about when I was growing up. That was it.
Now there's this world of predators out there who can get into your
Now
kids'
they're on
world.
the internet.
Yes, and they can get
And
into
they're
your kids' world.
pretending to be children their age.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are real things, and the kids need to be smarter. And it's difficult because they're kids. They're supposed to be dumb and make mistakes. These are critical mistakes.
God forbid they listen to us.
Well, again, you don't know anything. You didn't go through this. You don't understand.
Right.
You don't understand, Ma. We all say, every generation says it.
Yep.
It's just in the face of, I mean, and consider AI, what's coming in the face of what exists right now. There's a lot out there that they have to comprehend. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of math. There's a lot of books to read. There's a lot.
Well, and there's a lot of good too. I mean,
Yes.
the one thing, my kid's a talented musician, and music is the one thing we can talk about that's not fraught, right? And one of the things he gives me credit for is I really don't. I was a big Yes, Genesis, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, all those. I was a big prog rock fan guy. I don't listen to those folks anymore because there's so much good music coming out now. And but when we're in the truck going somewhere, I'll say, you need to listen to so and so, and I'll tell them. I mean, I like turn them on to everything, like the Carpenters, ABBA, Genesis, Jethro Tull. When they pop into my head, I say, okay, and I'll say, I don't like this band, never liked this band, but understand they're influential, and this music should be in the library in your head,
right,
of music. And then he's into this stuff called noise rock, and but he plays it for me, and he's collaborating with some noise rock musician somewhere, and
he's got to grow, but it's painful. It's so painful.
What's that?
He's got to grow, but it's painful.
Yes. And so,
I should say the kid's got to grow.
Yes.
But it's painful. Growing. It's painful.
Yes. And
I just, I hope that that the journey that the kid is on doesn't become a point of no return, where it's.
I think we've headed that off.
Yeah, because that's the scary part. That's the part where there are evil people out there to exploit the feelings and his, what, and I'm going to say what he understands.
Yes.
He'll come to terms with whatever it is. Yes. And if he becomes a she at some point when he's 40 years old, okay, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Nothing.
Right?
And we told him he's supposed to be going to WVU, West Virginia University, in the fall.
Right.
I mean, it's time for a little birdie to fly.
Yeah.
And go be whatever he's going to be.
I wish the best. The biggest thing is that the strong desire to live, to survive, compounds that feeling of utter futility.
So, you want to know who killed Apo?
Oh, who killed Apo?
Uncle Paul. His son.
His son.
His son, my wife's uncle. And the thing is, when I wrote the book, Paul was still alive. So I didn't want to get sued for libel.
Oh.
But it was him. Him and a
those gypsies.
Yeah, no, you got it. And that was and this is the thing, going to cops, you never go to a cop as a gypsy.
No.
Ever. Cops are nothing but trouble. And for those who haven't read my book, my wife is half gypsy, and her family, her biological family, who she is now estranged from, are a bunch of criminals. And
are all gypsies Hungarian?
Honey?
Or is it that area?
No. They originated in India. And every country has their own version.
Yes. So they're sort of like, yeah, I mean, they're sort of like, I don't know, people that just take to the road.
Well, they're their own worst enemy.
Yeah.
There's a book I highly recommend if you're interested in gypsy culture, which I am for obvious reasons because I'm married to one.
Right.
There's a book called Bury Me Standing. And this woman went and lived with the gypsies for a period of time. And there's a description. This has been used in other scenarios, but there's a description in that book that gypsies are they're like crabs in a bucket.
Mm-hmm.
And when one starts to climb out,
Mm-hmm.
the others reach up, grab them, pull them back in. And that kind of describes gypsy culture perfectly. And but yeah, my wife's family, Uncle Paul was a bad dude, and actually our whole family was a bunch of bad people, which is why I keep contact with them.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the thing is, so what happens is Uncle Oppo, Grandpa, answers the door, and two thugs bust in, and they tie him up to a chair and they beat him because he was a coal miner who kept his money and literally kept his money stuffed in the mattress. Now they didn't know this, but they knew he had some cash. And they beat him and beat him. And he said he couldn't identify his attackers, but they didn't blindfold him. And one sat astride him, facing him, and pistol whipped him for hours. And then Uncle Paul would never say who his attackers were. And he said couldn't identify him. Well, couldn't identify him, bullshit. He knew exactly who. And one of them was his son. And we figured that out through Aunt Elizabeth, who knew it because Aunt Elizabeth used to visit every other week. Mm-hmm. And this was a weekend that she wasn't going to be there. And someone called to make sure Aunt Elizabeth wasn't going to be there. Mm-hmm. And that's when they came and attacked Oppo. He ended up dying of his wounds. He never did name his attackers. And but we knew it was Uncle Paul. And so, but I could not. Paul died recently. But I would have put it in the book had he been, because you can't libel the dead. Mm-hmm. I didn't know if you knew that or not. You can't libel the dead. And so I would have put that in the book. But Uncle Paul was alive at the time, so that's just kind of left as a. Is
any of Leah's family, any of them still alive?
Her mother.
Her mother's still alive.
Her mother, the evil ones last the longest, right? And so I check for her every once in a while. I'll do a Google search on her mother's name, and I go, "Honey, your mother's still not dead." And she says, "Yeah,
she'll know when I think she'll know when she dies. Maybe she will.
Possibly. She was horrible. She was just a horrible woman. And what was funny was when we first got together. So we have this kid. I'm like, just such a naive idiot. I'm like, well, I don't want her to be forbidden fruit. Our son may want to reach out to her and meet his grandmother. She's like, I can see she's like getting visibly tight, and she's like, are you fucking crazy? But she agreed to it. She said, okay, I'm not going to, if he wants to meet her. And then, so we're going through Aunt Elizabeth's things. She died, right? We're going through Aunt Elizabeth's things, and she was a hoarder. And among them, we found this letter from my wife's mother to Aunt Elizabeth. And it was a letter to all the members of the family saying that her daughter, Sarah, had just gotten engaged to a guy. And this is funny. Well, maybe not. I found this very funny. She said to a guy named Cohen, don't worry, he's not a Jew. They were anti-Semites, right? And in fact, her crazy aunt, she had another aunt who was like, she was schizophrenic. She hung out with the famous
Tennessee Williams.
Yes. And
I saw that in the book. Yeah.
Yes. And in fact, the family lore, I didn't include it because family lore she had an affair with Tennessee Williams' lesbian sister. But I did the arithmetic and it didn't add up. So I didn't add it. I said, well, I don't know about that. I don't think that was possible. But anyway, when we named our kid Max, we get this scathing letter from Aunt Margaret saying, "How dare you name your son after a Jew?" And we're like, "What are you talking about?" So this is what these people were like, okay? And so anyway, in that letter, where "Don't worry, Andrew Cohen's not a Jew," she said, "This is you can imagine this is good news, given the troubles my other children have caused me." Now, what she's referring to as troubles her children have caused her was a son who died in the 80s of a heroin overdose in New York City.
That was
Last
Lena's
time my wife
brother.
saw him, Eric was living in a boiler room apartment in the Lower East Side or some shit. And an estranged daughter, my wife. These were troubles they had caused her, the mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, no, my son never sees this woman. She's just terrible.
Yeah, this is the problem when people hold on to their worries and they don't ever challenge them and lift themselves up from their worries. It's like we all have shit that happens to us, and granted, some people have worst shit ever. What
Right.
I mean, really, I'm not going to say my life's been rough, but I have always had a place to stay. I've et cetera, et cetera. I've always been able to find work. There are people that are very down and out. I'm not going to say those people don't exist, and I don't want to use the word privileged because I hate that word. On my list of words with triggered.
Right.
But I will say that when our responsibility in this world is to lift ourselves up and lift others up with us. That's the responsibility that we have. That's why we're here.
And stop crying.
And stop crying. There, he's crying.
Yeah, this is one of the, there he's crying. Hey, thank you. This is one of the things my sister, he's since passed, but she had a son with cerebral palsy to the point where he had no gag reflex, had to be fed through a tube in his stomach and could never walk. And one way, if you want my sister to lash out at you, pity her.
Oh, you see?
She wants none of that.
She wants none of that.
And one day we're on the phone and she goes, "Ken, am I a psychopath?" And I said, "Why?" And basically, somebody died. Somebody's parent died. And it was like this parent was 80, and it was just like the way things happen. And this person was just in hysterics over this mother dying. And Jennifer's like, "Oh, just stop. This is what happens. Just stop." And she said, "Am I a psychopath for thinking that way?" And I said, "No, not at all." And we liken it to a lot of our upbringing, which I talk about, with my dad, who was a bit of a psychopath. But he also, he made us tough.
That's what I was going to say. Some of us are tougher than others. I don't cry like other women cry.
No.
I don't cry. I'm like, yeah, okay. It's bad, but you're not going to make me cry. And that's only because of the way I am. I've been hardened.
Somebody else has it way worse.
Yeah, but there are a lot of women that I know, the first thing that they do is cry, and then they get their way. I never got my way when I cried. My mother said that thing that a lot of mothers would say from our era. "Oh, you're crying? Well, I'll give you something to cry about."
Right.
And you stopped. Or you had a temper tantrum. My sister had temper tantrums. I stopped crying.
Right.
So I got to a point where, okay, I'm in a really bad way. And trust me, when I was in my teens, I tried to commit suicide. I say try because I didn't, but I took an overdose of pills and came out the other end and said, "I'll never do that again."
Right.
Never do that. Never ever. And again, no one told me you need to look at the upside of everything, but it's just something that I did. So I was like, that was really shitty. I did it because of a boyfriend. You're going to kill yourself over a boyfriend?
Right.
You think it's the most important thing in the world when you're 16 years old.
Yes.
This is what I'm saying about hormones. It's like your hormones are raging. You have no control. You're not able to say, yo, hormones, let my brain figure this out. Or, something? I can't figure this out. So shelve it and just move on.
Right.
Because there are situations in life you cannot solve.
Well, and this is something that the military is very good for. Throughout my career, because the military teaches you how screwed up government bureaucracies are, and it also teaches you how to deal with complete nonsense. And like I tell the story of how we're all standing there on the tarmac. 200 of us are standing at parade rest on the tarmac in Arizona, and this general starts giving this speech, and we start dropping from the heat, and just boom,
boom. He keeps on talking.
He kept talking. And so throughout my career, something would happen at a company where I worked, and everybody would be flipping out. And there's me and like this one other person who just aren't getting that worked up. And I found out the other person is a vet. And it's like, so once you've been in the military, this stupid shit that's going on here is nothing. You are used to such insane stupidity that it prepares you for, the minor stupidity.
More insane stupidity.
Yes. And so, I don't know. Life is good. We're in West Virginia now.
That's good.
We're like inner hillbilly.
There you go. You're inner hillbilly.
Very peaceful.
It's good.
Living on a mountaintop on 20 acres.
Lena got a new car?
What's that? No, she doesn't drive anymore. I'm her chauffeur.
Oh, okay.
And
is it a pickup truck?
Yes. Of course it is. No, I'm a total hillbilly now.
Is it a Ford?
No, it's a Toyota. Toyota Tacoma.
Okay.
Hillbilly green, however.
Mm-hmm.
And
hillbilly green.
The people here are, it's a major gun-toting culture.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody you meet, you figure has a firearm on them or very close.
Mm-hmm. So nobody starts shit.
No, this stuff, and this is what I said, because we moved here in 2020, and I said, and I said to my friends, I said, you notice that these people getting up on people's faces for not wearing a mask, they never have Southern accents. And I said, I'll tell you why, because you do that sit down here, you get shot. Mm-hmm. And they're unfailingly polite. And I contend it's because they're all armed. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you something else. We had a massive storm, and our driveway is like 400 feet long, and it's gravel, and it's sloped, very sloped. We're up on a mountain, mm-hmm. And we had this massive storm, and it ripped the bottom of our driveway to shreds, to the point where we could get out of here, in and out in my truck. It's a very high truck. In four-wheel drive. In my truck, in four-wheel drive only. The Honda Pilot, no way it was getting in or out. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. So anyway, 2 days later, I go walking down the driveway to assess the damage, and it's fixed. And it turns out, and this is like the most West Virginia thing that ever happened to me. It's the guy. One of our neighbor's sons was working because her basement was flooding. So he brought his backhoe over to dig a drainage ditch to protect her house.
And all that
dirt.
He
saw how messed up our driveway was, and he just came up and fixed it. That was it. And so we had chickens, so we gave this woman a dozen eggs and a jar of preserves to thank her for her son just fixing our driveway out of the blue. And this is what they do. If somebody needs a new roof, it's like the Amish. Somebody needs a new roof, they get together and they just
you have a barbecue and you fix it.
Yes. And it's so very different. I'm not going to say it's paradise. We do have a meth problem. And there are some, there's certain, it's hard to explain, but there are some hillbillies who are problematic here. I could take you, we live in a nice house. You hop in the truck with me. I'll take you about 3 miles down the road and show you poverty like you've never seen.
Mm-hmm.
People living with blue tarps for roofs.
Mm-hmm.
And but every state has its issues.
Mm-hmm.
And the big thing is in New York, we were paying $10,000 a year in property taxes alone.
Right.
Here they're $1,200.
Mm-hmm.
We sold our house in Manhattan at a ridiculous profit. We paid cash for this house. We owned it outright.
Mm-hmm.
And so the financial hemorrhaging that began with trying to help my son finally stopped.
Right.
And we got it stopped in time. But as long as we're careful, we don't need to work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just very mellow, very happy. And so the book is kind of very tumultuous, as you know.
Mm-hmm. It's a good book to read. It's a good read. It's a good, quick read.
Thank you. And it ends on this very soft,
Mm-hmm.
landing note. So
yes, I thank you for talking and talking. It was fun. It's a lot of fun.
I'm pretty much a hermit these days. I talk to my wife, and that's about it.
Well, you at least have your wife, and let me just say, love her dearly, because when the day comes, and it will come for us all.
Yes.
I talk to my dogs. Well, I still talk to my husband. Of course, he's not here.
Right.
I still talk to him. I have a picture of him on my coffee, where my coffee mugs are, because I'm a coffee person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a coffee person. And so I go to that cabinet a lot. So I have a picture of him up there. And every time I go to the cabinet, I say, Harry, honey, you want a cup of coffee? And
Mm-hmm.
his answer is always, no, not right now. Mm-hmm. And then I say, okay, how about now? And he would always say, shut up. That's when he would say, you're an asshole.
Right. But I'm your asshole.
Exactly. But I'm your asshole, honey. I am your asshole. So, yeah, this life is funny like that. So I wish you the very best. I want everybody to read the book. It's called
There He's Crying.
There He's Crying by Ken Miguel.
It's not a sad book.
No, it's not.
It's a very funny book. It's got some rough spots.
For all of my friends in email marketing and in marketing, it is the best read in the world.
Thank you so much. I'm truly honored. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Take care.
Take care.
That's a wrap.
All right.